What is happening out there, rotoscouts basketball fans? Welcome to the show, gang. Thursday afternoon, heading into Thursday evening. Potentially, as Ricky's calling out in the chat, potentially Amen Thompson night. We'll see what happens there. Free Amen. Could happen. Not necessarily the case. We'll see where the Jalen goes. It's basically the determining factor. Jalen Green became questionable during the day, so potentially a little piece there. But right now, we've got Jalen up near the top of the board on both sites, actually. One of the more popular plays of the day. So it'll be interesting to break that one down. But let's say hi to everybody. Cujo's here. Doing pretty well, Cujo. Got crashed early last night. Got a few hours sleep. Woke up around like 3:30 in the morning. Just said, all right, I'm going to power through, do the show, get lineups in, be up till like into the evening, go to bed at like a normal human time on Thursday and like reset the whole schedule. Didn't work out. I ended up taking a nap during the afternoon. But what are you going to do? But yeah, it's been good. Hopefully the same for you, Cujo, and hopefully the same for everybody else out there. Stephen Leibowitz here. Mamba's here. Roto Scouts for the win tonight. I love it. Let's make that happen. Somebody out there is going to take something down tonight. I know it. Can feel it in my bones. What's going on, Travis? Travis Wyndham's here. Mamba's here. Good little quorum to start the show. About 10 people hanging out so far. As we talked about at the end of the show yesterday, ended up becoming a 6-gamer today. There's 2 late games that aren't on the slate on either site. But interesting little 6-gamers. I kind of like the looks of this slate right now. Just pull up the Vegas lines real quick. See what we're looking at. And 2 of them came off the board. Something's going on. Some updates are going through. I'll divert to my other tab here. So this was as of 45 minutes ago or so. So there might be some very minor changes in the line movement. And I'll pull up the board so you guys don't have to stare at my face. Milwaukee and Charlotte starting us out. Milwaukee favored by 11.5 on the road. 217.5 point total. Not the greatest game environment in the world. We'll see where the pieces and parts land. Just as I'm glancing at this thing, we're sorted by DraftKings win rate. It looks like I do see Cody Martin hanging there in line 10. But then nobody else really popping from this one. Brandon Miller all the way down in line 27. Doesn't look really relevant on FanDuel. Playable and actually looks like he's getting more popularity in our top 150 than his win rate, which is a good thing. But not a lot of pieces coming out of that. Grant Williams is also there. But the 217.5 point total on the Bucks side of things, the potential blowout, 11.5 points. It's not the craziest high spread that we've ever seen. But there's some potential for this Milwaukee team to suppress the scoring for Charlotte, really keep them down, and kind of light them up. Utah at Orlando. Orlando favored by 6.5, 225.5 point total there. Atlanta, Brooklyn, the closest spread of the day at 1.5. Brooklyn favored by 1.5 at home. Atlanta still obviously without Trae Young. No Onyeka Okongwu again. 222.5 on the board there. 4.5 point spread in favor of the Golden State Warriors at Madison Square Garden against my Knickerbockers. Got a little bit of an issue with that line. 222 point total. Knicks obviously still without OG, still without Julius, still without Mitch Robinson. But some pieces and parts, and they beat better teams than this Warriors squad with this group. So we'll see what happens in that one. But I think we'll get at least a few pieces, I would have to think, from the Knicks. I see Josh Hart on the board there. Nobody else really up at the top. We'll see how it breaks down when we look at the positions. Might be a little bit more room for some Knicks, but not the biggest total in the world either. Two decent defensive teams, 222 in that one. So we've got 222, 222.5, 225.5, and 217.5 so far. Not exactly the top of the food chain in terms of game totals so far. But then we jump up 237.5 between OKC and San Antonio. OKC favored by 11.5 on the road. Wemby versus Chet should be interesting. Should be a fun game to watch, if nothing else. I'm seeing just out of the corner of my eye there, a lot of pieces from the San Antonio side look like they're on the board in the middle. Looks like we've got a few pieces from the OKC side. I know Jalen Williams is one of the more popular players on both sites today. So it looks like we're taking a lot out of this game with the big total on it. And I like that idea. Always a good thing to have in your back pocket. High expectations for the game. Last game of our day, Houston at Phoenix. Phoenix favored by 8.5 at home, 232-point total there. Phoenix should be fully healthy. Believe we're dealing with a healthy Phoenix squad, so we've got the full group of their big three together. But looks like we'll get to a few of them as I look here. Nurk is actually questionable. So the big three are intact, I believe, but Nurk potentially questionable. And of course, he's the highest ranked when we sort by DraftKings. They're in line 7, but KD's up there. Bradley Beal's right there in the middle of the board. So it looks like we're going to have some pieces from that. And then on the Houston side, just to bring us full circle, we talked about, is Beal questionable, Ricky? You're right. He is questionable, as is Eric Gordon. That's up on the site, but was not in my memory. I forgot that that he was questionable. So, all right. So we'll see what happens. Whether or not, Nurk probable. That's what I get for trying to speculate about things before running through the review of the ins and the outs. So yeah, we'll see what happens with Beal. Nurk, we'll see whether he's out there. He is probable though, like you said. So better sign for the top of the board there with Nurk. KD obviously just a good piece and looks like he's coming through a ton. But as I was getting at, we do have a lot coming out of the Houston side as well. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Jalen Green. Right now, kind of in the middle of the board, DraftKings wise, a little bit better looking on the FanDuel slate. Pretty popular on the FanDuel slate. Dylan Brooks all the way up at the top of the board there. Freddie Van Vliet drawing a lot from that one. So we're getting a lot of pieces from the two games that are in the 230s at the end of the night. Pull up the ins and the outs. Make sure there's been no news over the last little bit as we gotten started here. Friday late game. If you're playing the later games, typical setup for the Lakers. LeBron questionable, AD probable, Cam Reddish probable. Jamal Murray not on the report for Denver. But for the games that we actually care about, nothing has changed since the last update on the site. Probables, Giannis, MarJon Beauchamp, and Yusuf Nurkic. Questionable, Andre Jackson Jr., Walker Kessler, Paolo Banchero, Ben Simmons, Jalen Brunson, Jalen Green, Bradley Beal, Eric Gordon. Out, Chris Middleton, LaMelo Ball, Nathan Mensah, Nick Smith Jr., Mark Williams, Otto Porter Jr., Jonathan Isaac, Trae Young, Onyeka Okongwu, Patty Mills, Cam Thomas, Andrew Wiggins, OG Anunoby, Julius Randle, Mitch Robinson, Tari Eason, and Nas Little. And Joker's here to say hi to everybody. What's up, Trey? Trey's making breakfast for dinner. Bacon, eggs, and potatoes. Love it. Could actually go for some of that right now. Yeah, I know he's not. I know Patty's not with the team anymore, Steven. I appreciate the note. He was listed on the injury report, and as I was putting it together, I wrote him in there, but I spotted that later on. I'd actually take him out of the projections. I had him in there with like 2 minutes attached at the first run through, and then I spotted that. Usually I do the run through. Check the obvious ins and outs, but I missed him on the initial, and it's always built like the rotations just kind of exist in the spreadsheet, and then I go in and I tweak day to day for whatever, update minutes when things change, handle the ins and the outs. So he was just lingering in there with a couple minutes attached to him until I spotted it, but we've got him out of there. Wave should be called way out. Yeah, or just not list guys who aren't on the team anymore. Like, I guess it's a technicality. Like, he probably still draws a paycheck from them right now until the waivers clear or whatever. So they have to list him, I guess. But yeah, it's just dumb. Like, if once they're not on the team, let's just take them off the report entirely. And then it would be up to us to remember that he's been waived in that situation. So I'm actually glad he was there, because otherwise I would have completely missed it. But yeah. It's a little bit weird that they list guys who are no longer with the organization. Anyway, looking at the top of the board, it's pretty flat on the DraftKings side. It's interesting. A lot of we peak at 29% on DK today in terms of the win rate, and we're fairly flat, fairly consistent down through the top 27, 25 guys, whatever you want to call it. It's a pretty decent little group, and then it thins out fairly quickly. So it's oddly directionally clear today, assuming obviously this is relying on the sims and the accuracy of the projections, but this is a little bit more of a straight line than we normally see. Normally we'll have a couple guys up in the 30s, and big days with a lot of key value chalk. We'll have guys into the 50s and with a lot more ownership. We are getting some popularity on some of these guys, like Nurk, 42% of the top 150 at 26% win rate. Some of these guys in the 30s. But it's a little bit less peaks and valleys on DraftKings today. FanDuel, we've got the usual peaks and valleys. Cam Johnson, 47.5% win rate. 33.9 for Jalen Williams. Obviously, these are not sorted in this order. 40 for Cody Martin. 43 for Kevin Durant. A lot more peaks and valleys on FanDuel. So very different looking slates, site to site today. But I think some of the key plays will be consistently the same across sites. So let's get into some of the breakdown here. So I don't think it's anybody's favorite kind of an option when Dillon Brooks is popular, when Dillon Brooks looks pretty decent in terms of how he's coming up in sim results. Right now, he's the, let's call that like 7th or 8th most popular player on the DraftKings slate, like the entire slate. On the FanDuel slate, he is right in the same territory, like the 8th most popular player. But he is coming up with the best win rate on the DraftKings slate right now at 29.9%. 28% of the top 150 against pretty similar ownership. So I think probably just take Dillon Brooks right along with the field. Just not one of my favorite players in terms of just been burnt by him way too many times. I feel like we've gotten so many of those out of Dillon Brooks over the years. 31.5 minutes, 13.3 FanDuel points. 18% usage for the season, 0.70. He's not the worst option in terms of what the usage looks like, in terms of his ability to put up some fantasy points. But we're talking about a 7.6% assist rate, 5.3% rebounding, 56.7% true shooting. He's obviously going to chuck. He's shooting 39.7% from 3 right now, taking 5 a game, making 2 of them essentially. It's there. It's correct at price and positionally and everything. It's just, I wish it was anybody other than Dillon Brooks. You can just give me the rates the same, all of it the same. Just change the name. Honestly, it's a little bit of bias creeping in on my part, sure. But I think it's warranted with this player. It's just been too many times. So Dillon Brooks, top of the board, definitely playable. Get around the field to a solid like 25-ish%. If I'm making one lineup, does Dillon Brooks make it? Probably, given the results. It's just not comfy. It's not something I'm happy about, but he's probably in it. On FanDuel, 27.7% winner, 22% of the top 150. That puts him a little below, I think, the field. Right about the field on FanDuel as well. Just not my favorite option on the board. I think I made that pretty clear. Mikal Bridges does look pretty good. 7,000 is a good price for him on DraftKings. 1.01 DraftKings points per minute. You're getting him 29% in winners, but just 16% in our top 150. Imagine that makes him fairly popular. Yeah, we're about 10 points below the field's exposure on him on the DraftKings slate. Travis Wyndham still mad his team signed Brooks. Ricky Lee. Can't wait till 2.3% on Curry nukes the Knicks with 50 bomb. I can definitely see that. Player like Steph, something about MSG just kind of electrifies them. But yeah, I like that side, and that's, kind of, if it turns into a 3-point shooting contest, I like some of those Knicks to potentially exceed, a Dante DiVincenzo, potentially exceed his attempts, and some of those guys. Bojan for whatever minutes he gets. So I think there's some support from the Knicks side of that argument as well. Should be a pretty good game, I think. Assuming that Jalen's in. If Jalen doesn't play, then all bets are off, obviously. Travis is saying if Green sits, Whitmore becomes a play. I do think that there's room for both, as you're saying there, with him and Amen. I have Whitmore at mid-teens minutes, I think, right now. No, 20 minutes right now. I've got them both actually at 20 minutes. So if I take 30-ish minutes off the board, 29 minutes off the board for Jalen, each of those guys probably jumps a little. And then whoever's just in the initial lineup will probably get the bigger chunk of it. But it would be like 30, 24, 28, 26, something like that. And then spread out some other minutes to other guys. Maybe one of them gets into the 30s. I'll have to think about it as we get the news. If Jalen plays, though, he does look pretty good. Right here in the middle of the board. Or the upper part of the board. 18.29% win rate on DraftKings. 18% of our top 150. Just look at the flatness on DraftKings. This is... we haven't seen a lot of slates where, everything's equal. And I know that there's a difference between a 12% win rate and a 29% win rate. But it's not as stark as a lot of days. On FanDuel, Jalen looks stronger, 28.8% winner, 24% of the top 150 assuming he does play. Bradley Beal, assuming he plays, he also looks good on FanDuel, 28.6% winner, 26% of the top 150. Looks good across town too, and we're actually getting more of them than his win rate on the DraftKings slate. The DraftKings site. Sound like somebody's first day on the internet. That is, that's a pretty good chunk above the field. It's a little bit more than double the projected ownership for Bradley Beal. So if Beal gets out there at 6,700, that's not a bad option. 0.99 for the season. What I didn't look at is if we have it probably wouldn't matter that much. I'm just thinking through like Beal, no Eric Gordon, but I don't think that's going to have all that big an impact on these guys' numbers. Leave Nurk in. We'll take Gordon out just to see it. Yep, 0.98. Same. Oh, nope, that hadn't updated. It did it again. That's so weird, and it's the same team as the last time. Every now and then, for whatever reason, Wowie for me just reverts to showing me the data for the Utah Jazz. And I don't know why. It's still, if you could see my screen right now, it says team name Phoenix Suns, players off Eric Gordon, and then it had Kevin Durant was there, Bradley Beal was there, and then it flipped without changing any of the inputs. And now I'm staring at the season-long data from the Utah Jazz. So weird. Anyway, I did see the number before that happened, and it's right in line with where he's at. So no real potential uptick there. It's just a decent spot for Bradley Beal if he does take the court. On FanDuel, 28%, 26%, and then 19 and 28. And again, a little bit more than double the exposure of the public right now in our top 150. Freddie VanVleet, for all the thinking about potential young players and backups and everybody that might come out of that Houston side if we get no Jalen. Fred VanVleet just on his own doing Fred VanVleet things, back in his normal role, back to his essentially the regular minutes, 36-2 the other night. Of course, he put up just 14.7 FanDuel points. Didn't see that game. That's a total disaster. Obviously, this kills any lineup that he's in. But at 6,600, I think you can go right back to the well. 26.9% win rate, 31% of the top 150. On FanDuel, it doesn't work nearly as well. 7% across the board, basically, at 7,700. Good slot machine numbers, but other than that, not really a play. Playable, but not a priority on FanDuel. Looks like a reasonable priority at 6,600 on the DraftKings slate. He's going to be popular there, too. He's the most popular Houston Rocket on DraftKings right now. That'll probably change if we get more minutes for Whitmore. It'll change if we get more minutes for Amen. On DraftKings, Whitmore would be potentially a little bit more interesting just because he's 43 versus Amen, who's 59. I assume that it goes mostly to Amen. Like when I was talking about the minutes before, my expectation would be Amen being the guy that 30, 31, 28, whatever it lands at. And then Whitmore just gets some more than he's got right now. But at the price, that's an interesting spot. But to the point, Freddie VanVleet does look pretty strong on the DraftKings board. 6,600. It's just a good price for a guy who can go well above the 1.02 that he's given us so far this season. Travis had a lot of Fox last night. Yeah, that was a little curveball. Devin Mitchell. How about that comeback last night too? By the way, in that late game. Oof. I only saw little bits of it, but my gosh, that is a gigantic lead to blow in the fourth quarter. Steven, not sure why, even without Trey, why the Hawks are not favored, even at their house. Yeah, it's only a point and a half. Somewhat negligible, but yeah, I'm with you on that. I think the Hawks are the better of those two teams. The other one that I was looking at, speaking of that game, and I'm curious, let me show you where I'll ask the question this way. Gotta find him first. DeJounte Murray. I'm at basically 44 fantasy points on both sites. For those of you guys who are seeing, you don't have to tell me the numbers, but like, how does that jibe with some other places? Because it's a few points higher than where RG's got him, and they've got him just like at his season long rate. When in a no Trey situation, and like over the past 30 days, he's been way higher. I kind of split the difference a little bit just in case I was missing something, but I kind of want to give DeJounte another couple of points beyond the 41, because the 44 I've got him at, because I've currently got him at 1.23 per minute. Not like a pace up spot for them or anything, but not the most daunting opponent in the world. I don't really see why to really, to aggressively undercut what his current production has been. So I'm just kind of curious where others are on that. If you guys have eyeballs on other places, 44, just tell me, about right, couple high, couple low. Don't have to give me numbers. But I'm curious about that one. I do think it's a good spot. He's not popular at all. Maybe they're just screwy on him today. Because I'm just noticing now they're not projecting him for any ownership either. If anything, I think DeJounte goes up a little bit from where I've got him. I don't think he comes down. Unless I'm completely missing something about the scenario. Yeah, so we're right in line. All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate that. Just a little sanity check every now and again. That's why I use, comps from other sites. Helps keep things in line. Helps me catch things that I miss. Mamba's fading Murray unless I say otherwise. All right, so we can look at him. He's obviously, he's way down here. It's a FanDuel play, a hell of a lot more than it's a DraftKings play. 8,800 both guard spots on FanDuel, has him coming up 26% of the time in winners, 26% in our top 150. Looks like a pretty good option on FanDuel. On DraftKings, he costs 9,400 and he's a point guard only. He landed in 0.16% of winners and 0% of our top 150. So it's a wildly different play from site to site. Josh says, I'm just caveman hand builder. Wouldn't know where to look over there. Cool. I appreciate that, guys. So yeah, I think it's a very, very different play. He's one of the guys that's most differentiated across sites. DeJounte, obviously right here, the price is significantly better on FanDuel. $600 less on FanDuel is going to give you a big advantage site to site. Yep. We've talked about Jalen a little bit already. EB, we're waiting on that news. Obviously could create a pretty interesting situation value-wise around around primarily Amen, but obviously a little bit of Whitmore as well. We've already got some pieces and parts. Dylan Brooks, Freddie Van Vliet up at the top of the board. Jalen's right here himself, but may come off the board, obviously, and that would vault some of his other teammates up a little bit. But at the very least, Dylan Brooks, Freddie Van Vliet look pretty decent on DraftKings. Brooks holds up on FanDuel. Freddie just is playable on FanDuel, just to go back and summarize that real quick. Another guy I don't completely love, but has decent numbers, 0.98 per minute on FanDuel, 1.02 per minute on DraftKings this season, pushing nearly a 24% usage rate under normal circumstances. Just played 21, let's call it, the other night and put up an 8.2. I feel like that's the Lonnie Walker game that I tend to get. And he's a little bit expensive for what he does or where he's projected anyway on the FanDuel slate. 5.6% win rate, just 2% of the top 150. On DraftKings for $3,900, he looks like an interesting option. Both shooting guard and small forward, 25% winner. And we got to him a little bit more than the public. Or, well, shouldn't say it that way. We got to him more than the win rate. We got to him, a few points more than the public over there. It's just a price-driven play on a slate that doesn't currently, anyway, have a ton of $3,000 guys. So at 39, he hits the board a little bit to make things work on the DraftKings slate. And 44 is a 49. Is a 35. Julian Champagny. Nobody really wants to go there. Pat Bev at 32. I don't trust that at all. Gary Harris at 37. Don't really have any love for that one either. So I think this does work when we're talking about, looking at some of these guys on that price tier. Out of those guys that I just named, the Gary Harris's allure. Gary's a great example. 0.64 per minute and 12% usage. If I'm going to pay 37 for that, if I've got 200 to spare and I can get to 0.98 and 24% usage, I think I'm going to take that. I've got Gary Harris getting a few additional minutes, but you can obviously see the difference in projection there, the difference in opportunity there, even in smaller time. So I think Lonnie does work on DraftKings. Just another guy who's just not one of my favorite options to discuss. Cody at 52, pulling a ton of weight on FanDuel right now. 40.8% winners, 49% of the top 150 at 5,200 shooting guard and point guard eligible. At 49 on DraftKings, he looks like a very good part also, but not as aggressively good as he is on FanDuel. 21% winner, 30% of the top 150 on the DraftKings slate. He's coming up at DraftKings. We're approaching like double the popularity on DraftKings. Kind of interesting. And we've got a good chunk of points that are about double the field on him on FanDuel as well. If you wanted to call that more, get 35, 40%, be a chunk ahead of the field, but not quite double at such big numbers, half your lineups if you're building a bunch of them. I get that, but he does look like a solid option. 0.81 per minute, 15.9% usage. Obviously not the best in those terms. 22.2 minutes the other night, 18.7 FanDuel points. That's not going to get it done, but looking a little bit stronger than that tonight. Shooting just 31% from three. What are those other numbers? Making one, taking three. 7.5 points, 4 boards, 3.7 assists, 19.5% assist rate, 7.4% rebounding rate. I don't love that spot either in terms of the game environment. But if Charlotte's going to hang in there at all, it's probably going to be pretty involved. Trey Jones, Devin Vassell from San Antonio in that showdown between San Antonio and OKC. Vassell not really landing on FanDuel, 7.6% winner, 5% of the top 150, but does look good over here. And we got to him fairly aggressively ahead of that win rate. Puts him... We're a little bit ahead of the field. The field's a little above where his win rate is here, and we're ahead of that. at 7,100 point guard, shooting guard. Seems like it's justifiable given where he is in the Sims. But I don't technically love getting overextended on a play where the public popularity is already in excess of the win rate. Usually we like that the other way around. Win rate higher than public popularity equals extend our ownership. It's a little bit of a wrinkle on Vassell, but does make him look pretty appealing given that the Sims did get to him that frequently in the very top lineups. So it might just be a case of a higher ceiling for the money than any of these other options are giving us, landing him in when he does succeed in the 20% of the time that he does succeed, he's vaulted up to the best lineups. Trey, 20.3% winner, 28% of the top 150 for $5,000 on the DraftKings board. Also looks pretty decent. That's also, it's a pretty similar situation to Vassell. The 28% is ahead of his public popularity. The public popularity is slightly ahead of the win rate. It's a little bit closer. But these guys are kind of in the same boat. OKC is a good defensive team, so there's that wrinkle to it as well. It is the biggest total on the board, though. The 11.5 points aren't really that daunting for these two players. I think we're fine with San Antonio. Outside of like Wemby, I don't think there's anybody that they're really gonna protect minutes wise, and I like the spot for him. So I'm not really worried about the 11.5 points all that much. But I don't love the idea of just OKC's defense and having like both of these guys. I don't know about Champagne, but I don't know about both of these guys in the same lineup. I don't know about double dipping on that spot against a good D, I guess is the idea. On FanDuel, Jones 15% winner, 22% of the top 150, just single digits for Vassell. Beal we talked about, but again, if he goes, he looks pretty good. 28, 26 on FanDuel, and then 19% winner and 28% of the top 150 at that price on DraftKings. That's pretty good. SGA against a not that good San Antonio D, 15.4% winner, 28% of our top 150. Mid-teens across the board on DraftKings for 10-7. He's 11-4 on FanDuel, and we're still getting him that much. It tells me there's probably more value on FanDuel today, just price-wise. It's a pretty stark difference between how much we got to him here at the much higher price. Obviously, we're talking about one of the highest ceilings on the board, one of the highest raw projections on the board, 1.58 per minute on FanDuel, 1.55 on DraftKings. Pretty spectacular in any situation. I don't really think we're too worried about, unless they go out there and light him up by 30. But I think SGA gets his in this situation. Played 32 the other night, put up 46 FanDuel points in that run. That's not going to get us there, obviously, at 11-4. We need him to crack this pretty significantly. So we need another 20 or so points on top of that. We need that upside game at that price. 20 might be aggressive, but we need more. We need more than 46 for 11-4. We need more than 46 for 10-7. But he's got that capability for sure. Bogdan looks decent on FanDuel, but we got to him well less than that win rate. On DraftKings, mid-teens win rate and also less exposure. He's coming up more popular on both sites than where we got to him. Yeah, most popular guy from the Hawks on the FanDuel slate. Second most on DraftKings. I like Bogdan. He's 0.98 for the season, 22% usage. There are more things to do. Whether he does them or not is always the key. But in this scenario, there are more things, more expectation for him. 29.9 FanDuel points in 27.9 minutes the other night. Not quite where we want him. Need a little bit more than that, obviously, at 6,600 on FanDuel, 6,400 on DraftKings. You do get point guard, shooting guard eligibility from him on DraftKings today. Small forward, shooting guard on FanDuel. An interesting and entirely justifiable play. But the sims are telling us come up a little bit lighter than the field on him. That said, given how much room we have with that win rate, even against his ownership, there's a few points of room on both sides. I don't mind getting out to a little closer to the field anyway. I don't know that we need as big an undercut on Bogdan. Suggs looks better on FanDuel than on DraftKings. 23-22 versus 13-10. Brandon Miller, not much on FanDuel at 6,900. A little bit more there for him at 65 on DraftKings. 20% of the top 150 is interesting. Again, just not a great game environment and doesn't obviously favor this team. But he's owned just in the lower mid single digits. So I think you can definitely get above the field on him. If nothing else, I don't know that you need to go to 20%. But a few additional shares beyond the field on Brandon Miller looks like an okay idea. This one's just price-driven, just DK. You can see on FanDuel at 43, he didn't land in any of the top 150. He was in winners like twice. But 9.3% of the top 150 against 12% winner on DraftKings. It's just because he's 3,500. You can see it's not even 20 minutes. Played basically that 19 the other night. Put up 21 FanDuel points. It's about all there is. 0.81 on both sites per minute for the season. You give him 19 minutes, he's going to give you back about 16 fantasy points most nights with upside to about this. This is, 25-ish maybe is about your ceiling game in this situation from Champagne. And again, they're going up against a pretty good defensive team. Dame and Dennis Schroeder look better on the FanDuel slate than they do on DraftKings. They're both playable on DraftKings. Got to them less than the win rate, though. On FanDuel, both a little bit less than the win rate, but the win rates are significantly higher. Schroeder, I don't love. 0.89 per minute for the season, 19.5% usage rate, but has slipped since joining Brooklyn in terms of the per minute output. Where do I have him today? I put him like right in line with his recent performance. Oh, actually, no, I ended up giving him back a little bit. Put him at 0.81. Where did he go? Unless he clawed some of it back and I'm misremembering. 29th. No, 179 minutes, 0.71. So it's gone up a little bit over the last couple of games. Had been in the 0.6 range. I've got him closer to this, kind of splitting the difference. Capable of good performances for sure. But another guy just, I for whatever reason, don't get there a ton with him. And since we're getting him a little bit less than the field, I'm perfectly fine being, half the field or less. Pat Bev also falls into that bucket. Schroeder, between the two, Schroeder's the better option DFS-wise most nights. He's got a lot more usage. He's a marginally better per minute performer on FanDuel. A little bit more of a gap there on DraftKings. But obviously, Pat Bev is coming out of a completely different price tier, completely different expectations in terms of minutes. At 3,200, he's kind of on the board on DraftKings. 13% of the top 150, 9.2% win rate. That puts him about 5 points ahead of the public popularity. Or at least the public popularity that he was simmed against. Obviously not a lot of ceiling there. For a low usage player without a lot of expectation of minutes, there's not much ceiling beyond this. But this price is just leveraging other things into your lineups. DiVincenzo looks better on FanDuel. Like I said, if that turns into a 3-point shooting contest against Golden State, I could see DiVincenzo taking a few extra and having a pretty decent day. 0.98 per minute on the season, in the 1.0 something range over the last 30 days in this enhanced situation. 27.3% win rate, 29% popularity on FanDuel. Single digits on DraftKings for 7,500, 72 on the FanDuel slate. Makes him look a lot more appealing over there. Still playable on DraftKings, but obviously nowhere near a priority. Gary Harris, I don't love that he's coming up a little bit. Looks like he'll be a part of our lives on FanDuel. I mentioned before the 0.64 per minute, the 12% usage. I'd rather get to other value plays. I said that before when I was talking about, who was it? I think Lonnie Walker. You can see against Lonnie at 47 on FanDuel. Gary Harris picks up a little bit more at 4,000 in that head-to-head that I did the other way around for DraftKings. On DK, 6.5% winner, 7.3% of the top 150 at 3,700. Doesn't even really hit the board that hard for price. Just getting soaked up here at 32, at 35 up here, and then, of course, at 39 up there. If Brunson goes, looks like an is who he is kind of a spot for Jalen. Any given slate, potential upside. No downside to his game, just priced correctly at 97, 96 across sites. Still landing in 7% of the top 150, 6% win rate on DraftKings. A little bit more on FanDuel, 10% winner, or 10% of the top 150. Booker in 10% of those. He would see a little bit of an uptick if we get no Beal. No Beal, no Eric Gordon might give him even an additional little bit. Want to keep an eye on. I don't know how much it really drives this up. 9,300, 9,200. He's about correctly priced. But there's a little bit more room there for Booker in the no Beal situation. Murray, we've talked about. Looks way better on FanDuel. Doesn't really look all that playable right now on DraftKings. Steph just at 2% across the board on FanDuel. Didn't really hit on DraftKings at all at 9,500, 8,900 on FanDuel. Makes him look a little bit more appealing. I do think there's ceiling there. You can take additional shares of Steph on this slate in this situation if you've got a few lineups with a few extra bucks to spend. I think there's enough ceiling to justify grabbing a couple additional shares when he's that low owned. Low single digits for a player like that. It's a luxury item kind of play. You can always take it, even if it doesn't necessarily math out correctly. Grayson Allen from the mid-range, 5,800 on the FanDuel slate. Hits a little bit, not at all at 5,700 on DraftKings. Those are the primary differentiated guys site to site. Misic, 8.3% winner on FanDuel, 4% winner on DraftKings. Didn't get him really at all at 41 on DraftKings. Got him a little bit on the FanDuel slate. What are you guys chatting about? JJ Walton, what's going on, buddy? I'm also glad you found us, pal. Were you a victim of the purge over at the other site and you've been just looking around? Or did you just happen to stumble across like my Twitter feed or whatever? Been doing this coming up on a year now. I was talking about it on yesterday's show. But I'm glad you found us. We've been doing this since opening day of baseball season last year. We're here pretty much every day for shows. Free projections up on the site, rotoscouts.com. Rotoscouts at Rotoscouts is the Twitter handle if you're not following that. Subscribe here on YouTube. Jump into the Discord. Let me drop a Discord link. I haven't done that in a little while. Those expire too frequently. Momo bought out by the Spurs. I do not believe I have him projected for anything. I'll double check though, Steven. Thank you for the note. Interesting name on the buyout market. Capable veteran guy who's been there before. No. Had him at 0. No expectation. Always worth double checking though. So Discord link is in the chat. Join the Discord. Hang out. The more you guys talk in there, the more fun it gets. Trying to get it to the point where, I just remember the old days of, not even Stochastic really, but Awesemo. With the Awesemo Slack at the time. You could pop in there at 3, 4 a.m. on the East Coast and people would be in there chatting. Or maybe it would just be me in there talking to myself about movies or talking to, what's his face? Dr. Miles, that guy. Who did not end up being a very popular guy by the end. But yeah, love to get some more activity going. And JJ saw it on YouTube. Doesn't use Twitter all that often. Going by things that we used to get at the old site in terms of like how people tracked us down, YouTube was actually the biggest draw. That surprised me. I always thought it would be Twitter or just, results. I saw winners. I saw Alex winning, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, YouTube is really good for finding shit. So JJ, really glad you made it, buddy. I'm glad you're here. Come on back. And hit the site too. Free projections up on the site for this slate and every slate. I think we're done with guards. Let's jump into some forwards here. Spent a lot of time in guards. And now we'll just talk about a bunch of these same guys. Dylan Brooks still at the top of the board because he's got forward eligibility on both sites. Bridges we've talked about because he's got guard eligibility. Jalen Williams we've talked about. Cam Johnson, the first different guy across sites. Only 49 on DraftKings. 26.1% winner. Landed in 35% of the top 150. That is a lot of Cam Johnson. Most popular guy on the Nets on DraftKings. Whew, that is a lot of ownership. So we're on FanDuel, 47.5% winner, 60% of our top 150 in Sims. That's a decent chunk ahead of the field, but the field is aggressively high on him. This win rate is higher, which is a good thing. The win rate gives us about 8 points of room there. That is a lot of Cam Johnson. 51, it's a good price. 0.89 per minute, 18.9% usage. The 49 on DraftKings is also a good price. Obviously not as aggressively good as on FanDuel, but 35%. We are ahead of the field's not insignificant ownership on that site too. But the gross exposure to him on FanDuel is it's a lot. Yeah, that is our highest owned player on the FanDuel slate. $15.2 in 29 minutes the other night. That is not going to get you there. Not by a long shot. But again, 0.89 per minute for 5,100 with a reasonable expectation of minutes. I do think he makes sense. Lonnie popping up. We talked about him during the guard spot here. But again, coming out of that same situation. No Cam Thomas for the Nets today, by the way. I mentioned that when we were doing the ins and the outs. But that's kind of what's creating additional upside for some of these guys. And then just the price at 49, it's unavoidable. At 51, it's way more unavoidable on FanDuel. Looks like a good spot. Obviously, you can tell I'm not that enthusiastic about the Cam Johnson play. But the numbers completely support it. I guess I just really don't like the Nets. Maybe that's what it is. I feel like everybody that I talk that way about comes from this Nets team. Except for Bridges. I think he's a spectacular player. Player, not play. He's a good play today. I just think he's a very good NBA player. But yeah, maybe I just don't like the Nets. I don't know. Jump back to forwards. I was wondering why Nurk was there. I was like, wait, did they give Nurk forward eligibility now on DraftKings? KD, let's jump to talking about a really terrific player. 9,600, both forward spots on DraftKings. 9,700, power forward only on DraftKings. Both forward spots on FanDuel for 96. Confusing myself now. 22% winner, 30% of our top 150 on DraftKings. In the 40s on FanDuel. One of our higher owned overall FanDuel players. Don't dislike that at all. I would much rather have 48.6% of KD than 60% of Cam Johnson. 1.29 per minute on the season, 131 on DraftKings. Put up 41 in 38 minutes the other night. Obviously, there's more upside than that. If you get no Bradley Beal, if you get other missing pieces and parts for Phoenix, there's just additional upside there. Comes in drips and drabs in terms of the rate uptick, but it would be higher than where we're at right now. So KD looks pretty good and potentially could look a little bit better by the time we get to lock. Wemby, in the Wemby-Chet showdown, looks very good on DraftKings. 20.3% winner, 21% of the top 150. On the FanDuel slate, we didn't really get there, unfortunately. 11.6 versus 10.1 is a pretty stark price difference. Power forward and center eligible on both. He's been spectacular. 1.68 points per minute on FanDuel, 1.63 on DraftKings. One of the best points per minute players in the NBA, full stop. 7.32% winner on FanDuel, just a share or two of them. On DraftKings, though, at the lower price, 20% winner, 21% of the top 150. Pretty enthusiastic about that option. Mama says, see my earlier statement about the Nets. I knew you'd eventually say that. JJ was watching Josh's process show. Haven't seen that in quite a long time, but he always did a great job. Josh Engelman at 6 o'clock in the morning across town on Stokastic. Always worth a watch for the process show. But yeah, no Adam, no Neil over there anymore. I actually meant the purge that they did of in their Discord. Apparently they booted a bunch of people out of the Discord the other day. So we picked up a few new members from that, which is always fun. What else is going on here? Let's see. Josh Hart. Looks like Josh Hart. 23% winner, 11% of the top 150 on the DraftKings slate, 16% winner, just 6% of the top 150. I assume that just means he's a little bit popular. Yep. Call that about a third of the public popularity on the DraftKings slate. And then on FanDuel, a little under half. So Hart looks definitely playable, 7,300, 7,100. We are approaching a bit of a price ceiling there. 0.79 for the season on 13% usage, as we've looked at over the last few weeks. These days, he's more 0.85 per minute and like 15.5% usage. But still, as this price continues to climb, that does become a little bit limiting for what the actual ceiling looks like for Josh Hart. He needs his 40 minutes to get you 40 FanDuel points. So, like he did the other night. So once this price peaks, it does become a little bit concerning. I do think he can get there. The win rate is right around the public popularity on both sites. If you wanted to go up to the public popularity, I have no real issues with it. But as always, Josh Hart comes with that asterisk. He's got to do those Josh Hart things, and he's got to also make a few of his shots when he's positioned this way price-wise. 31.8% from three, 52.3% true shooting. Just a good rebounder, a good assist, or an underappreciated facilitator. Does a ton on the basketball court. Love the player, but at these prices, I'm kind of more in line with undercutting the field by half to 2/3. Paulo Banchero looking better on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings. About twice as good. 32.6% winner, 28% of the top 150. Versus about 15% across the board on DK. Taylor Hendricks, 35% winner on FanDuel, 48% of the top 150. On DraftKings, he only landed in 11% of the top 150 against a 14.5% win rate. That's one I want to look at because he was pulling some popularity. Let's see. So we're a little bit below the field. Field's a little bit ahead of that win rate. So given that, I do like where we landed. Like I was saying earlier, if we've got public popularity at a percentage that is a fair amount higher than his expectations for being in the winning lineup, then undercutting makes sense. And that's exactly where we are. That's exactly what we're getting here. We're not, it's not half the field. It's above half the field's projected ownership. There's a little bit more room than 11. If you wanted to go out to like 15, you'd still be undercutting by a handful of points. But I don't dislike the idea of taking about 10 points off his public popularity on DraftKings. On FanDuel, he is one of the more highly owned players of the day. We're right about the field on the FanDuel slate. 4,500 power forward only, 35% winner, 48% of the top 150. That's almost dead on the field's projected ownership. So I think he just looks like a decent piece of playable chalk on FanDuel for value. If we had somebody pop up at, say, 4,300 at the position, it probably soaks up a lot of this. Just, take a couple $100 off. It was a 0.79 per minute player, 14.1% usage for the full season, 23.6 in 27 minutes the other night. It's a price and opportunity driven play. Obviously getting more run these days. For the season, just played 20 games, 16 minutes per game, but again, played 27 the other night. What does the last few look like? $27 a game over the last 3, 22.6 over the last 5, 21.4 over the last 10. So I do think it makes sense to be with the field on the FanDuel slate, undercutting the field by 10 or so points on the DraftKings slate. Puts us about right on Hendricks. There's a little bit of value-based, price-driven upside there. Helps you get to other things, leverage guys into your lineup. Not a ton of ceiling there. Grant Williams didn't land at all. Keldon Johnson didn't land at all on FanDuel. They both look a little bit better on DK. 14% winner for Grant. 12% winner for Keldon. Keldon Johnson down to 4,900 on DraftKings. Hasn't been good. 4.79 points per dollar on FanDuel. He's still at 6,000, both forward spots. 3.7 points per dollar. Explains why we didn't get him. Brandon Miller, playable on FanDuel. A minor option on FanDuel at 6,900. At 6,500, shooting guard and small forward. Hits the board all right on DraftKings. 12.7% winner, 20% of the top 150. There are a couple pieces coming out of that Charlotte side on DK today. Which, again, just throwing them into the Milwaukee buzzsaw, the lowest total on the slate. I don't necessarily love that. I don't know how many of these guys I would pile into the same lineup. But I think it is justified to have some shares of each of them. Miller is... Where'd he go? There he is. That puts us, well ahead of the field on DraftKings. Well ahead of the fields. Right about the field on FanDuel, but well ahead of the field on DraftKings. Draymond looks better on the FanDuel slate than he does on DK. Playable on DK, but only came up about half the win rate. So that's probably one where we're undercutting the field. About 25% across the board on FanDuel. Definitely an option on FanDuel. 6,400 power forward center. Out there doing Draymond things against a, good Knicks front court, but one that's a little bit banged up with Hartenstein still dealing with the Achilles. And then going up against, Precious and Jericho Sims and those types. I don't dislike the potential of the day for Draymond. It's just a decent price for him, too. I don't know how much I want him at center with a couple good center options on the board, but with power forward eligibility, I don't dislike it. Saddiq Bey, 17% winner, 12% of the top 150, 11-7 on the DraftKings slate. Got a little room for Bey. Sohan and Lou Dort, not as much. Dort is playable on FanDuel. They're both on the board a little bit on DraftKings. 10% winners on DraftKings at 51 and 4,400. And then Giannis hiding in here. 9.2% winner on DraftKings. 7% of the top 150. Just about 4s across the board on FanDuel. Giannis is a luxury item. You can always play a little bit of additional Giannis. That said, we are undercutting the field. It's a little bit less than half the popularity on the FanDuel slate. And about the same. About half the popularity on DraftKings. But again, when we're talking about ceiling, when we're talking about per minute upside, Giannis is Giannis. The price is very, very high. He needs to get you into the high 60s, 70s, somewhere in that neighborhood. If Charlotte manages to keep it close and the game exceeds expectations in terms of overall scoring, then maybe in the actual expectation for this game, he looks okay. He looks playable, but not like a top priority. I think we were getting some more of some guys like KD, some guys like Wemby. So it doesn't look quite as strong. This is a comparison I've gotten in trouble making a couple times already this season. But 10-1 at the same positions for Victor Wembanyama, giving you 1.63 DraftKings points per minute versus 11-3 at power forward and center for Giannis Antetokounmpo, 1.64 1/100th of a DraftKings point per minute is not a big gap for that big a salary difference. Obviously, Giannis is projected for more minutes. Obviously, Giannis is one of the best players of this generation in the NBA. Not that Wemby's not going to be, but it's there right now, DFS-wise. It's weird to say, and on FanDuel, they've got it correct. Wemby's only 100 less on FanDuel. You can see the numbers are fairly similar, and we actually got to more Giannis on the FanDuel slate. But on DraftKings, that price difference is significant. Paolo Banchero, Paolo was questionable, right? Yep, Paolo is still questionable, or was when I started the show. God knows what's happened since then. Let's reload the news real quick. 5:30. Giannis is available. Ben Simmons out. That's interesting. Paolo Banchero remains a game time decision as of 14 minutes ago. So all those goddamn Nets are going to get a little bit more interesting. 20 minutes come off the board from Simmons. And probably just land on that group of guys. A couple few still there for Cam. A couple for Lonnie. Maybe DSJ gets a couple additional. And some downboard guys maybe. I can't go that much higher on McHale. I've already got him at 36. DFS is at 26. Maybe he sees it jumps to like 28 change. But yeah, there's going to be some movement on the Nets, and it's going to be probably upward for all those guys I've already said I don't necessarily love getting to, but it's going to enhance the situation for those guys. So any negativity that I put into anybody's head on those plays, just completely erase it. There is all the reason in the world to expect that spot to succeed. Trey says, they keep playing this commercial with that Just the Two of Us song, and now it's stuck in my head, and I can't stop singing it, thinking of Terry and Joker. Just the all of us, just the me and, oh, wow. Did another show just start or something? We dropped down to 13 people? Don't know what happened there. Maybe I got boring just reading off numbers. Sometimes I feel myself doing that where I get a little bit too like just this guy's at this percent and that percent, and you know, gotta try and make it a little bit more engaging sometimes. A couple people just came back. This is why I don't sit here and watch that number all show. The main crew's here. Yeah, Trey, exactly. The regulars are here. Other people come and go, and look, people watch this later on. I really don't pay attention to the viewer number that much. Mama's saying Bridges, Johnson, and Schroeder. Yeah, I mean that's already where we were. Two of those three guys are right there in the top four already, and it's obviously going to be an uptick. Lonnie, I think, should be mentioned there, and then yeah, Schroeder, and honestly, DFS he's down there in line 39, but he was pulling 20.7% on FanDuel, 29% of our top 150. Single digits on DraftKings, but will probably crest 10% at 3,900 now if I give him an additional, minute or two. And he was already landing in 16% of the top 150 on the DraftKings slate. So DFS becomes an interesting option tonight. Jay Crowder, Bobby Portis, their usual mid-20s run. Each of them looks playable on DraftKings. Jay Crowder looks somewhat interesting on FanDuel, where Portis doesn't at all. Portis at 63 just doesn't hit the board on FanDuel. At 55, he does on DraftKings. At 37, Jay Crowder's on the board on DraftKings, but 41 on FanDuel is making Jay Crowder work a little bit. 13% winner, 16% of the top 150. Another just very low end per minute guy. One of the lowest usage rates that, as I'm saying that, I noticed his teammate Pat Connaughton a couple spots down at 9.8%. A couple really low usage guys there. So Crowder is a good defensive player, can do a lot of, havoc related things on the court, but one of those guys who definitely comes into games with capped upside. It's price driven on FanDuel. It's not my favorite play on the board given the limitation of ceiling there. He can get you there. He can do enough to make value. He can do enough, 21 and 23 the other night. That's a great Jay Crowder game. That's putting him a hell of a lot closer to a point per minute than his normal output. So he'll get you there, but he's not going to give you anything else. Or very rarely is he going to give you anything beyond, I got myself across the line for value and then just drop across the finish line. Marketing, not really on FanDuel, 3%, 2% of our top 150 on DraftKings, 5% winner, but just 1% of the top 150. That puts us at about a quarter of the public ownership, but the public ownership, that means that the public ownership is in the still, mid-single digits. Marketing's good enough that I think if you landed with a few additional shares and had them around the field and still, call it 5% or so, no issues with that. 5% of most guys at that kind of a tier isn't going to really kill you. Could every now and then work out. Technically, mathematically, not the absolute correct, true optimal decision to make, but there's a little bit of leeway there. That said, I don't love the matchup against Orlando. That game is 225.5. Is that? Yeah, that's true. It's a bunch of games, 3 games right in that 220s, mid 220s range. Not a great spot for marketing, but he's moderately playable. DeAndre Hunter basically doubling up his numbers on FanDuel as compared to DraftKings. Mid-single digits across the board on DraftKings. Right about 10% on FanDuel. Kuminga, another piece from Golden State, invading the Garden tonight. 10.1% winner, 12% of the top 150 on FanDuel. Didn't really hit on DraftKings at 61. Power forward only. Probably just getting boxed out by some of these value types. Not a bad option, 1.02 per minute. What's his ownership looking like? That's about half the field's popularity. If you wanted to, field's right about here. If you wanted to take him about his win rate, grab a couple extra shares. It's again, you're talking about the difference between 5 shares and 7 shares or whatever that maths out to. Look for differentiated guys. A little bit of Clay. Obviously hasn't been great. The minutes are questionable at this point. Not a part of the starting lineup most nights anymore. Even with like the other night with Wiggins out, Clay still didn't get the start. 5.9% winner, 5.3% of the top 150 on FanDuel, just 1.6%, and just a lineup or two on the DraftKings slate, not a priority at all. 10% win rate on Grayson Allen, 8% of the top 150 on FanDuel, not a play on DraftKings at all. That's about it in terms of guys that are different site to site. Jalen Johnson didn't land in a single lineup in the top 150 on either site. He's just expensive now. 8,500, 8,100. I feel like that's a little bit high. Or at least it's limiting as compared to a lot of the other options on this slate. 1.3% winner, none of the top 150 on DraftKings. 2.1% winner, none of the top 150 on FanDuel. He's not popular by any means. But I think they've just priced him too correctly. That is like the dead-on correct price where we just don't get him. Whitmore, again, potentially could pick up some value at 4,300 shooting guard and small forward on DraftKings. He was already landing in 2.4% of the top of the winners, 1.3% of the top 150. If we gave him 6 additional minutes, 4 to 6 additional minutes, if we get no Jalen, at 43, I think that works. 47, it'll work a little bit on FanDuel, but at 43 on DraftKings, that'll probably come up some. I don't think it's going to crash through it's not going to be in this territory even, but maybe he lands, more like this, somewhere in there. I think that's about it at the forward spot, barring another exceptional performance from Bol. He didn't land at all. Only a handful of minutes, obviously. If you get no Nurk, he is probable, but if you get no Nurk, that could become interesting. Keep an eye on it. Let's jump to center. Alan Marga calling the random ass Alec Burks night. All right. I get behind that. Yeah, Trey, Trey brings it up again, and it's really surprising. Or it's a unique construct of this slate anyway, whether it's surprising or not. 30 right now on the ownership that I use, 31.6% is the highest public popularity on DraftKings. And then our highest exposure rate on DraftKings is better than that, or is higher than that rather, at 42. But then we're 38, 35, 31. And like we said, the highest win rate on the DraftKings board is just 30%. So I think it's just a flat day until values emerge, right? If somebody drops into the slate at 31, that suddenly is getting a big expectation of success, that completely changes the paradigm, and then you're getting more KED with a bigger win rate than this. He jumps up, Wemby, guys like that all jump up, and it completely changes the shape of the slate. And you'll see that value guy shoots up into the 50, 60% owned type of territory because he'd be the only value guy right now. Outside of like these, the mid-range types that already exist. But right now, yeah, very, very flat slate on DraftKings. A lot more peaks and valleys on FanDuel. It's a unique animal of a slate. Alan, right now, Beal's projected as in. We will see. I don't have a good read on his situation. Let's see if anything's changed. The 530 just landed a few minutes ago. I don't think he's had any kind of status change. Yeah, still questionable as of the 530. That game's like the last one of the night, right? Yeah. Let's see if we can call anything from the news. Oops. Not the, it's tough with Beal because he's definitely not the most durable player in the world. All the reports from a day or so ago were, making progress, getting better, closer to playing again. The fact that he landed questionable versus probable. Let's see. Do we have an actual Vogel quote? Just that he's questionable. Yeah. Just given that it's Bradley Beal, if you put a gun to my head and told me that there's no late swap today, like we'll have to deal with tomorrow when we project a similar type of a situation, I would probably say no, he doesn't go. I think that would be where I land. But that comes with the major caveat that I'm not a doctor. I haven't examined his hamstring, and I have no idea. But yeah, just a little bit of bias against Bradley Beal with his history of playing through pain, if nothing else, would probably push me 55-45 no. But that's pretty negligible. Not to non-answer you, but it's just difficult to speculate on that kind of a thing. But yeah, I think that's probably the best way to put it. If I was projecting this tomorrow, where we don't have late swap on DraftKings, and I'm going to have to make some decisions like that, I would probably... See, that's tricky, though, because all season long I've been projecting questionable guys in. It's going to be weird. We're going to have to make some judgments like that. I think I would lean no-go for Beal if I was projecting tomorrow for this situation. Man, that's going to get tricky. It's going to be fun. Definitely going to be that'll create some shakeup site to site with questionable guys. There will be sites, you take that exact example. Let's say it's tomorrow. Let's say this slate today has no late swap. A spot like that in the last game of the night for a key player like that who would create additional value for other stars who already look pretty good. That becomes a situation where I've got him out, Stochastic got him in, RG's got him in, Run Pure's got him out. Those are going to create very different slate shapes. So in addition to just like the pure, I had a guy and he didn't play, I didn't have a guy and he did play of it, or I didn't have any of the value guy that got created of it, that is, the current buzz. I just think it's going to be interesting in terms of how we're going to have more differentiated lineups because of it, which will be good. I think that's very, very good for the ecosystem, especially with everybody driving through sims now. It's gotten more difficult. So I think creating that shakeup, that might be one of the reasons that DraftKings is doing it. I think it's kind of interesting. Mamba playing both Treys because it's a great name for Trey. Like it. So, Nurk right now, top of the board on the DraftKings slate at the center position. Assuming that he goes, he looks pretty good. 6,600, 1.23 DK points per minute on the season, giving you 5.5 points per dollar in this projection. At 66, that's a great option if he plays. 42% of your top 150, one of the higher owned players in our sim. 26% win rate, one of the better win rates on the board. On FanDuel, 14% win rate for 7,200 center only. Got to him 30% of the time on the single center site. So definitely an interesting Nurk day if he plays. Wemby, we've already talked about, looks spectacular on DraftKings, or very good on DraftKings. Not really getting there on FanDuel. I don't mind grabbing a few additional shares of him, though. He has firmly established himself, in my mind, in that superstar tier, where a couple additional luxury type shares, if you've got the 11.6 to spend, it's just like I highlighted before. They've correctly got him priced almost at Giannis level on FanDuel. There's a big, big difference still on DraftKings. Chet at 82. Obviously, we're not talking about the same per minute numbers for the season, but he's seen an uptick over the last month or so. And just a good showdown type of a situation. I don't mind drawing some shares of that. He's been at 1.38 over the last 30 days. So he's seen a pretty significant step forward at 1.38 on FanDuel. I don't mind grabbing a decent chunk of Chet here. Obviously, well, no, you can actually play him alongside Wemby if you wanted, given Wemby's power forward eligibility. 16.1% winner for Chet on the FanDuel slate, and we got to him 28% of the time. That puts us a handful of points ahead of the field. He's popular on FanDuel, but we're a handful of points ahead of the field at 28%. And then on the DraftKings slate, he's only the third most popular member of the Thunder on DraftKings. And we are a little bit above the field over there too. It's fewer than 10 percentage points ahead of the field on both sites. We're slightly more ahead of the field on FanDuel than we are on DraftKings, but it's a negligible difference site to site. We want to be a couple of points ahead of the field, I think, on Chet. Claxton, mid-teens numbers across the board on both sites. Definitely playable. 7,000 on FanDuel, 1.16 FanDuel points per minute. 6,400, 1.10 DraftKings points per minute. Priced appropriately for who he is in this spot. Clint Capella on the other side of that matchup, landing a little bit better on DraftKings, 12% win rate versus a 7% win rate on FanDuel. Only got to him 4% of the time on FanDuel, 5% of the time on DraftKings. I imagine that's going to be below our public number. Ooh, whoa, hadn't spotted that. He is popular on DK. Not so much on FanDuel. Single-digit popularity on the FanDuel slate projected for Capella. Right around that win rate. We're about half the public popularity on that slate. On DraftKings, he is significantly popular. We're about a quarter of the public popularity right there at 5%. He's only 5,300. 1.16 per minute. Still no Okongwu. Competing with Bruno for minutes. Got him at 25. You could give him a minute or two more, maybe. Where we been? Let's see. I'm surprised by that ownership number on DK. I hadn't spotted that. 25 last game, 17, 19, and then missed 2 before that. So averaging 20 over the last 3, but the 25 the last game obviously is the key piece there. Given that the win rate that we're getting for him at 53 is significantly below the public popularity, it's the public's about 10 points higher than that win rate. And again, like 4 times what our popularity came up at in the top 150. Looks like one of the bigger avoid spots of the day on DraftKings, the way I've got it right now. Gotta find a couple of points for him, maybe. Oh, bear with me. I'm just checking rates. Mama's got Freddie Van Vliet as his highest owned player. Only player I see with a 60-point ceiling in that range. Yeah, I like it. I got no disagreement there. 60-point ceiling I agree with. Was already coming up like a great play just from his median projection and standard deviation in the Sims. So I think that looks like a very good spot. Good decision. Here we go. Took a second for a Wowie there. It's just 135 minutes over the last 30 days for Capella 116, which is right around his season-long number. If we go back a little further, let's give him since calendar year. Last like 2 months. 112. I've got him at 1.1. Like I said, it's somewhere between 1.1 and 1.5 or so over the last like 2 months when he's been out there. I could see giving him like 1 additional fantasy point from where I've got him projected. 1.5 fantasy points. I think the minutes are projected accurately. I like the rate a little lower where I've got it, but I could see if you wanted to give him the additional 5/100ths of a point per minute, so be it. That gets you to about 1.25 points. So that would give him a little bit more. I'm just trying to explain in my head the public popularity for him on DraftKings today. I don't really see it. Again, the public popularity, about double that win rate. Not quite, but, for all intents and purposes, and about 4 times where we got him in our top 150 in Sims. I don't love that. Let's keep on moving, though. Brolo, 3% across the board on FanDuel. Looks a little better on DraftKings. 5,700 is that is him, yeah. 5,700 is a pretty decent price. 0.93 per minute on the season. Gives you 5 points per dollar at 5,700 center only. I'll always take some shares of Brolo. He's got some pretty okay upside at these low prices. Obviously could dominate that Charlotte front court. Giannis is Giannis. We've talked about him. Bruno is differentiated across sites, so he looks like the better option from Atlanta in just 18 minutes at 4,000 on the FanDuel slate. On DraftKings, he didn't come up at all. He did land in 3.7% of winners, but didn't land in any of our top 150 at 3,600. He is also fairly popular for what he's looking at. His popularity is about double what his win rate is on the DraftKings slate, which is why we didn't get him in our top 150. Wendell Carter is a little bit there on FanDuel. 8% winner, just 3% of the top 150. Probably an undercut to the field. Nothing to speak of on DraftKings. 2% winner for Dayron. Not a lot of upside there. If he stumbled into minutes, there's a lot of upside there. He's a very good per minute performer. But in the absence of additional minutes, it's difficult to justify the play. I meant not a lot there in terms of the sim rates. I think that's most of the key guys. John Collins not really showing much on FanDuel today. Low single digits on DraftKings. Precious, not really hitting the board on either site. It's a tight slate, more so on DraftKings. But especially when we get into the center spot, very, very tight slate. Let's look at some sims, some lineups. Some things will have changed. Not completely tragically yet, but we're already looking at a slightly different slate. As always, sims courtesy of our pals over at acemine.io. We've got an optimizer. We've got sims. PGA, NFL, NBA, MMA, MLB coming soon. DraftKings board. Could obviously lose those Bradley Beal shares in a hurry. He was coming up a fair amount of the time, though. Some Freddie. Good amount of Cody Martin, who we talked about as a reasonable enough value play in a game that I don't really love. Good amount of Brolo coming up in the top overall lineups. A lot of KD, a lot of Jalen Williams, some of the top owned plays of the day. Cam Johnson, some good chalk there. This is, by and large, most of the names we've been talking about through this show. Construction-wise, you're taking Cody Martin in this spot or this spot. Probably prefer him in the shooting guard spot, especially if we lose Beal. I think it makes more sense to get Cody in the shooting guard spot just because of the quality of play at the point. Between like SGA, Jalen Brunson, there's a couple guys at the, I think that are exclusive point guard. More so than like most of the shooting guards that you would be sacrificing, probably also give you small forward value there. So you can take these and put them here. You've obviously also got the guard spot to work with. But I think I prefer Cody, and again, especially if we lose Beal, I prefer Cody at the shooting guard, take a little bit of spend at the point. Looks like we're mostly value-based, like mid-type value-based at small forward between Lonnie, Jay Crowder, Dylan Brooks. We've got some Miles Bridges. We've got some Franz Wagner. There's room there. But construction-wise, it looks probably like we're taking a bit of a dip at small forward. Ability to spend at power forward, but it's probably just a forward versus power forward thing. Between Jalen and Cam Johnson, it's going to be a lot of one here, one over there, or in the util spot. Ooh, Keldon, I don't love that. So I think you've got some movability between power forward, util. Center looks like a lot of straight line down through Brook Lopez, Chet Holmgren, a little oddball Nick Richards there for value. But mostly we've got reasonable mid-priced centers on this slate. We can get Wemby at forward. We can get Wemby in util. You can put him at center, but it looks like primarily we got him at power forward. I don't know about util. I'm sure he's in there somewhere. There he is. Guard is just whoever we didn't put in the first couple spots. Lands in the guard. Forward, similar kind of a thing. Does look like we got a lot of our KD shares at just the raw forward spot versus using like having him land as a blocker to guys who are values at power forward only. And then util, mostly spendy. A few, mids and not that many low-end guys. And that makes sense if you just think about, construction-wise, if you're building through that lineup and you leave util to last, obviously you're going to want to try and leave some salary so you have full flexibility of that anybody position. My group text thread. They're remaking The Naked Gun with Liam Neeson. I responded earlier, I disapprove of the idea, but think it's the correct casting choice. And then my buddy Dan responded, as long as O.J. Simpson is in it, I'm okay with it, which I thought was pretty funny. No crazy outliers. This is a lot of right in line with expectation based on everybody we talked about, which obviously the numbers that we talked about came from this. But like lineups wise, we see a lot of days there are some oddballs and some outliers, and these are lineups that are really, really constructed out of just what we talked about. Woo, that's a good winner. Damn, that top lineup is very, very good compared to the rest of these. That's one to hang on to and rerun. I like doing that a lot. Run a sim, grab the top 100, put them back into the next sim, rerun it with those included in the pool, which you can do here. And then it generates a whole new pool. You see how those compete against a different pool of lineups. You take additionally good lineups that came up in that pool that hadn't been in the previous pool. You grab a few of those, rerun it again with even more and all of them. And you're taking just, the best possible options out of a couple different sims. Build out a lineup pool. But this one is standing tall above the others. Cody Martin, Bradley Beal, Lonnie Walker, Sadiq Bey, Yusuf Nurkic, Trey Jones, Victor Wembanyama, and Jalen Williams. Not exactly the most inspiring list of players, but damn if that doesn't bring you back $200 more than the other lineups. 0.35 is significantly higher than 0.19 in terms of your win rate. Not a bad lineup. Let's take a look at some FanDuel, and then we will punch out 6 o'clock already. Whew. Flew by. Hour and a half flew by. FanDuel, we're a little bit more spread out, a little bit more all over the place, which is to expectation given those more peaks and valleys that we saw. A lot of SGA. Good amount of DeJounte Murray. Cody Martin, consistent across sites. Jalen Williams, consistent across sites. Bogdan is coming up a little bit more on FanDuel. Cam Johnson is coming up pretty aggressively on both sites. We got some DFS shares in here, and that's probably going to go up. This is going to be a night where a bunch of lineups just die around the Nets. Why do I hate the Nets so much? It's funny because I don't actually hate them NBA-wise. Like, I have no love for them. I'm a Knicks fan. They moved to Brooklyn, but I grew up in Jersey. I went to Nets game. I saw Drazen Petrovic play. Saw Derek Coleman play. Wasn't a Nets hater back then. I'm not a Nets hater for the NBA. I think, what it probably is part of it was the Brooklyn move. A little bit obnoxious. The KD thing, a little bit obnoxious. Not letting the Knicks get him. But yeah, it's more of a DFS thing, I think. But again, today, they look great. There's a lot of upside there. Cam Johnson looks really good. Taking Ben Simmons out and throwing an additional 20 minutes into the pool for this team is going to create even more upside for them. Just not my favorite situation. Nurk, Chet, Draymond through the center spot on FanDuel. A couple shares of Nick Claxton in there. Not a lot of Wemby on FanDuel as expected. A couple shares of Giannis. Yeah, Wemby a lot tougher to get to because he's correctly priced in the mid-11s at Giannis territory. I think KD, the top option stars-wise on the FanDuel slate, like we saw in the Sims. As usual with FanDuel, it's a little bit, silly to go positionally and talk about the construction because a lot of them just break down to one spendy guy, one value guy. If we were really looking at that, it looks like we can get a little bit more double spend at point, a little bit more double value or like mid type guys at shooting guard. Right, Cody Martin, Gary Harris, Jalen Green, Cody Martin. If Jalen goes, Jalen Williams, Cody Martin, Devo, Moses Moody. It's an oddball. So probably a little bit more double spend at the point, but I think it's best to go like 1 and 1, 1 and 1. At small forward, looks more like probably like a 2 mids, or like you can even get a Jalen and a KD. So there's a little bit of money available at small forward, more savings oriented for sure at power forward. You do have your room for the KDs of the world. You're getting some expensive guys there, but not the preponderance is value based. And then spendy enough at center to afford any of the options that are looking decent on the slate today. 280 coming back your top lineup there on FanDuel. It's a decent little win rate by comparison to the other ones too. The top lineup on both sites did fairly well today. FanDuel wise, it's Cody, SGA, Jalen Williams, Keontae George. Didn't talk about him. DFS, Josh Hart, Draymond, Taylor Hendricks, and Nurk. Trav, what's going on, buddy? Could be Travis popping in at the end of the show. Going to rerun it on 2x speed. Boy, listen to me talk twice as fast. Got to be interesting. That said, guys, got some updating to do. We've got some changes. Well, I'm sure we'll have a few more. 6:05. Going to try and punch out, get the update up on the site by 6:30 at the latest. I'm sure I'll have it before that. There's not that many changes. But you guys rock. As always, there's no show without you guys showing up. So I appreciate the hell out of it. Hit the like button if you get a chance. Hit the subscribe if you want to. Jump into the Discord if you want to. Follow the rotoscouts Twitter handle if you want to. Not a lot going out there. Just links. Not an obnoxious Twitter feed, I don't think. But yeah, you guys are awesome. As somebody said at the top of the show, I forget who said it. Tonight's a Rotoscouts night. Somebody out there is going to win both sites. Let's take them down. Winners across the board. Blue site, green site. Last day, potentially, of late swap on DraftKings. Good luck out there, guys. Somebody go win something tonight. I will see you tomorrow.